The Heresy Accountabilibuddies Podcast is dedicated to all things Horus Heresy. This podcast delves into the grimdark universe where Primarchs clash, legions rise, and loyalties fracture faster than a Land Raider's track. But it's not just about the lore of the Horus Heresy. The Accountabilibuddies also explore the gaming side of things, from painting and modeling tips to product reviews and ideas to help you in your hobby. So, whether you're a seasoned Forge World veteran or a fresh-faced scout, this podcast is your Vox channel to the galaxy. Expect discussions on lore, modeling, gaming, and maybe even the shenanigans that your hosts somehow seem to find their way into. Remember, in the grim darkness of the far future, there are only two things you can count on: heresy and your trusty Accountabilibuddies.
Welcome to episode 105 of Heresy Accountabilibuddies. Tonight, we have a show for you. That's it, just a show for you. But to start it off, we're going to kick off who joins us tonight. I'm Jack, followed by...
Dan.
Duncan.
And John.
And Jack. Quick word from our station identification.
Do you love resin bases? Then go to our sponsor, Elric Hobbies, for all of your basing and basing accessory needs. Use code HERESYABB at checkout for a discount. Legendary Monument Hobbies. Monument Hobbies is a one-stop shop for all of your painting needs. Use code HERESYABB at checkout for a 5% discount on your purchase. Pop Goes the Monkey. Find maker of third-party accessory bits of arms, legs, backpacks, and more, where you can get 10% off your first order over $125 with code HERESYABB at checkout.
And thank you to our patrons. John, do you want to kick us off with hobby progress?
Sure. I'm going to say that since we declared our hobby progress 2-week hobby challenge, mine was supposed to be to get everything for the memorial table built and primed and to start sorting out the bases for the city. I had a little bit of scope creep on the when I started building the bases for the memorial table, so I did not get everything done, but I did get enough tiles done to do a close to having a full table done. So, but with everything I've got pulled out that's still not based yet, I will have a full table. And then Dan shipped me some stuff this week to get all that sorted out. So I've built 3 little displays off of that I haven't taken pictures of yet. And then Jamie is going to be shipping me this coming week. He's going to be shipping me the some cities fight and cities of death stuff that he's got left over that I want to incorporate into the city table with Pintor statue. And that is how I did on my 2-week hobby challenge. As part of that, during our Wednesday night hangout, which I failed to get hobby Thursday up because I ended up having a lot of Thanksgiving stuff to do, I worked on building a bunch of the bases, little war memorial bases. So each one of these little bases is kind of like a display that shows off what, like a famous battle or something like that. And they've got little signs next to them that show off some of the statistics and stuff like that. I've got the Vengeful Spirit fighting some Xeno ships. And while building that one, the Vengeful Spirit that Jamie printed off for me actually ended up cutting my finger in a few spots. I've got some Marines drop podding in to assault a Mechanicum, rogue Mechanicum objective with some fighter transports screaming overhead. I've got some Marine tanks and land jet bikes attacking a AA position. And then I've got like a serene little park area with an old-timey aircraft carrier that's kind of blown up, but it's actually the Rivet City from Fallout. One of the funny little bases that I built was the kind of gift shop for this memorial garden, and it's got a little area where you could line up and have your picture taken next to a Space Marine. Whenever I go to the outdoor store, Shields in the area, they've got this kind of full-size Dallas Cowboy torso and legs that you can kind of put your kids behind, and they look like they're a full-size Dallas Cowboy. I thought that'd be kind of funny to put in this area, so that way, it'd be like a little family photo thing for kids to do. Like when you put your head in the cutout and stuff, things like that. So I thought that'd be kind of funny to put on terrain. Other than that, I've just been doing a lot of cleaning up and making sure that I've got stuff built. I built a couple extra BFG ships, and the local game store had some BFG ships on sale last week when I went to the Thanksgiving event. And so I picked up some of those there to add to some other displays that I'm going to be building as well. And then for Black Friday, I bought a Battle Foam 1520. And then the local store does buy two, get one free. So I walked in there and bought some basing stuff to work on these display bases, as well as some paint to work on another project in the future. And that is everything I did. What about the Duncan?
Well, hobby-wise, my challenge that I was going to do was get one squad of these Rampagers, for everything except based. I got close. I haven't touched the bases, but I also haven't put their decals or their final seal. And then, I haven't done the decals. I haven't done the seal. I haven't done the weathering after that or their final seal. But I got very distracted with stuff going on, especially for Thanksgiving and everything else. So, mea culpa, that's my bad. Beyond that, honestly, I didn't get a lot of hobby done at all. I did some shopping. I talked about a special project with Pop that I'm working on with him. Beyond that, nothing else did I get done. So, Dan, what did you get done?
So I did complete my 2-week challenge. So my 2-week challenge was to build and prime my 5-man command squad plus my Primus Medicaid. I did that, picked out bases from the bases I ordered for each of them. Got them primed. And I actually started doing some organizing stuff. I realized that I have things way not condensed and organized well. I realized that when a box that I thought was an empty box for my 3D printer was actually where I found my Epic stuff to send that stuff to John. So I started going through and found I have an entire house box of sprues of Space Marines that probably has 3 complete Space Marines, and the rest is a bunch of bits of stuff left over from using other things when I built those Space Marines. So I've started clipping and putting those into little plastic organizer boxes, like button boxes, and sorting that all out. I think I'll be able to consolidate probably a full tote worth of things into smaller boxes and put them on shelves. And I also started labeling things. So I realized I have a box of 60 beakies and 35 cataphracti on sprue that I'm going to label up and say this is what's in the box, so I know what's in the box if I ever need to get to it. So yeah, I've done a little bit of organizing and finished my hobby goal. I know John posted something up about new hobby goals, but my hobby goal for next week will be at least to get the blue down on those Marines with the airbrush. Still, the guy that's going to be white, I'm not sure if I'm going to base him in blue and build my white up off of the blue. I think I am, because I want him to be that cold blue. So I got to play with that a little bit. And then the rest of the guys, I know exactly what I'm doing. So I just got to build the blue up on them and get them going. So yeah, so that's what I've got. So Jack, I guess you're the only one left.
I completed my hobby progress like 2 weeks ago, losers. I don't know what y'all talking about. Hobby progress is easy. My hobby progress was posting 2 episodes ago. Done. Check. I have been working on the Mastodon. I deckled it. I've old washed it now. The hardest thing about it was trying to figure out what accents I want to put on it, but got that figured out. I think I posted it up on the Ultramarines 30K Facebook group. I probably should have posted it on our group now that I sit here and think about it. I'm really bad at this whole entire social media thing. Really, really bad. But I just clear coated it. So next up is rust and weathering. And it will be done. So maybe tomorrow, depending on how cold it gets in the garage. Outside of that, I am kicking it over to John for the news.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. So the news has actually been pretty eventful, considering it was a holiday week. GW didn't miss their Heresy Thursday, and they showed off a Space Wolf rune priest or caster of runes for your Heresy armies. If you start looking at this guy pretty closely, you'll notice that he's really wearing some Mark V armor. So you've got a really kind of cobbled together helmet. It looks like it uses the upper half, kind of the eyes and back from a normal Space Wolf helmet, and then you've got the lower portion, the grill, and the kind of cheek guards from a Saren pattern helmet. If you look at his chest, it looks very close to a Mark II with some exposed cabling, and that kind of gorget that goes up around the neck to kind of seal that in. And then you look down at the legs, you've got something that's a little closer to Mark IV on the right and something that's a little closer to Mark III on the left. So if this could be leaning towards something we're going to talk about a little later, of hints at a possible future box set with Mark V, maybe. But it's definitely a cool model. I think if it wasn't so wolfy, I would definitely kind of steal some of the parts off this guy.
I'm really wondering how much of that is already pre-installed beyond the runes, because if that the non-banana fur codpiece bit can come off, that might be really really something to look at.
I think it depends. Did they say if it's going to be a plastic kit or is this resin?
It said it's resin.
Resin, so then there might be hope, because if it's plastic, the way they do plastic kits now, everything would be on there. But resin, there's hope.
Yeah, they usually make the cod piece and belt buckle like a separate piece. I'm looking really close, and it looks like there might be a seam where they stop highlighting the gold on the belt buckle as it travels back.
Yeah, I see what you're looking at there.
It looks like almost like where that gold stops highlighting, it's like there's a break there or something a little odd. So it's possible that that's a separate piece, but we'll just have to wait and see. Like you said, if you just take the fur off and then flip off those little Rooney things, I think it'd be great.
I think it'd be really cool to make it into something different. But even if it isn't, I mean, it's something other than, let's be honest, a Sons of Horus or an Imperial Fist, and it's exactly what we need.
And he's super flavorful without going over the top.
Yeah, it's not over the top wolfy at all. I really like that.
That's what I was going to say, right? You said too wolfy, but it's only too wolfy for doing other things, right?
Yes.
It's not too wolfy for a Space Marine Rune Priest. I think it's exactly the right amount of heresy wolfiness in my mind. So, they nailed that part of it, which is something they haven't always. So,
especially the axe is normal. That's kind of something they've always been adding wolf howl, wolf grins, and things like that onto the blade holding part. It looks like there might be something on the back end. Looks like a Viking
pommel.
I can't tell what that is. I really can't. It almost looks like it's a wolf head.
But it's not over the top. It's very very toned down, and what I like to see in Heresy Wolves.
And even if that is a wolf head on the back of it, I mean, it's not like he couldn't take it. It's not like he couldn't take a clipper to it or an X-Acto blade.
And it's not the standard wolf skull sculpt that's been on every Space Wolf model for 400 years either, too. So
I like that also.
Right, it's different, right? So like I said, I really think they nailed that model well, in my opinion.
No, I would have no problem seeing that guy on the table, obviously, and I'd have no problem kit bashing that guy, depending on the level of kit bash you can do from him. I really like those legs with those pointy spikes on it, and the way that they kind of look like a bit Mark IV and a bit other older marks. So, and that chest piece, if you could, depending on how it is, I could really see some getting some work out of filling in like the rune bits with a little bit of gray stuff or green stuff, and then fiddling beyond there. But yeah, overall, I call this guy absolutely a win. I think he's pretty cool.
Yeah, I like the psychic hood, and they kept those old second edition weird power cables that run on each side of the chest to tie them to
Yes.
some of the older librarian sculpts.
Yeah.
But it can't be a psychic hood because they're not psyker, remember? So it's got to be a like.
It's a wolf hood.
Yeah, it's his hoodie. It's to keep him warm.
Yeah, because Benris is cold.
But yeah, no, definitely a surprise, a good surprise.
The day before, we got some 3D renders of the Emperor's Children for 40K. Again, these are 40K, but it's definitely something that will work with the pre-heresy time or the post-heresy timeline for them once they went all weird and Meroviglia or whatever it was called, the dance off. They've got one unhelmeted head with a speaker grill for a mouth, and they've got two helmeted heads. So it's nice to see that they're still keeping with the same ball and socket joint for the head, so that we can just drop these onto normal heresy models. And then for our Sunday preview for next week, we got a whole bunch of kill team stuff. They're resurrecting some of the older kill teams that disappeared. So the Tempestus Aquilans are getting a separate box release. The Imperial Navy Breachers, the Death Corps Krieg, and the Extraction Squad of Arbites are all getting re-released. And every one of those can be stolen for Solar Ox or for militia, depending on what army type you want to build. For Legions Imperialis next week, we're finally seeing the release of all of the Dark Mech figures. So the Serperos Overlord Heavy Stalker box is coming. There's a box called the Stalker Constructs, and this is going to come with the smaller. It comes with 30 miniatures and builds 8 bases of Harpak former Scout hosts, 2 bases of Butcher Assault Stalker Cohort, Canibriac's Archer Battle Stalker Cohort. Wow, my brain is not working right. And Scintillax Cyclops New Spheric Stalker Network. And it comes with the Titanicus command terminals for all of those constructs, and not for the Stalker guys. Then they're also releasing the Thanatar Siege Automata cohort, and so this is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 Thanatars that you can get separately instead of having to buy the main box. And from terrain style, they're coming out with the Civitas Elevated Plaza. So this is, if you remember correctly, they released the Titanicus city tiles that could come out in plastic. They sold out pretty quickly before, but they were all really flat. Even though they had sculpted, some of them had sculpted roads, some of them had sculpted just boulevards and things like that, but it was all still pretty flat. This box is going to have 2 tiles, whereas the other box had 4. And these 2 tiles really have a nice raised platform area built up with some walkways and things, and you can build a big building in the center of them, or just use it as kind of a fortified position. It's definitely a really cool piece of terrain that I wish we could get in the larger scale, where it would almost be a 2-foot by 2-foot square by itself. Then we've got the Black Library Advent 2024 e-short subscription. Inside there, we're given one Horus Heresy short story called Anathema. That's got a picture of a Sister of Silence on the cover. Did we get that before? That sounds really familiar. I hope it's not a re-release.
I can't tell.
The only Sisters story I remember is the early one where they're broaching another ship in that weird space combat. But
yeah, with the alien baby.
yeah,
I thought that was a separate story, and then the sister left the Sisters of Silence and became an Inquisitor. I don't remember if that was that or not, but either way, it's coming out soon. And that story, Anathema, is written by Jude Reed, which honestly, that's a name I haven't heard before, so this might be a brand new story. From Warhammer merch, there's 2 brand new Space Marine shirts, or 1 shirt and 1 hoodie. They're actually kind of neat. One of the few shirts that I've found before that actually isn't crazy over the top. Got an Ultramarines logo on the front and says the Codex Astartes does, and then in bright red letters, not support this action. And on the back is I forget his name from the story, but but I am looking forward to it. So call back to that meme that was out there for a long time. That's really all we've gotten coming up. It doesn't sound like a lot going on, but it actually is a fairly good bit of stuff coming out for Imperialis, and then the preview of the Rune Priest.
So if we're going to talk about advent calendars, I don't believe they're a sponsor of the show, but they're definitely friends of all of ours. Is that the Miles? What is it? Why can't I think?
Legend.
Little Legend Studio is doing advent calendar for their Patreons at a certain level, and it includes a bunch of painting guides and some STLs for models he's had designed and a bunch of cool stuff. I didn't read real closely, but if you're in his Patreon and haven't caught that or interested at all, he puts out some cool stuff. They've got some unique sculpts that they've put together for some models, and obviously the painting guides are all really good, and there's a mix of getting a good army to the table to high level display piece painting things available. So that's a cool thing if you're interested in that.
Yeah, I've been subscribed to his Patreon, I think, since the inception. And Miles is definitely a really cool guy. One of the highlights of Adepticon is hanging out with him late nights.
One of my favorite things in Adepticon was we went to the Duncan Rhodes paint booth, paint and take, and it was Duncan's kid, stepkid, somebody related somehow, or just a young kid helping the group out. Had no idea who Miles were, and we sat there and did a paint and take, and Miles was trying out his paints and doing some weird techniques and stuff. It was pretty awesome. So yeah.
Cool. That's all I've got for the news. Duncan, you want to take us into our main topic?
I can. Yeah, I can do that. I was going to say, before I do that, for anyone out there listening, before we get to the main topic, a reminder that we do have our own t-shirts available and our own hoodies available at our website that you can find through heresypodcast.com, and we are running 10% off now, or basically last week or last recording time, through this coming Monday for the end of Cyber Monday. We've had a couple orders on there. Anybody else who wants to get in on that, we would greatly appreciate that. We use all proceeds from that to do cool stuff for the channel and for the cast and for the community. So anything you all want to chip in that way, we really do appreciate that. And we love seeing our actual shirts on people at conventions and events we go to. We love that.
In random
And while you're
TikToks.
talking about the
Yeah, in random TikToks, yes.
And while you're talking about the Discord, I set up the 2-week hobby challenge and sent out some promotional material to people to help post for us.
Would you want to
And
talk
we've
about that
already
before we get into the main topic?
Yeah, sure. So we talked about a little bit last time that we're going to go ahead and start doing 2-week hobby challenges. Age of Darkness really kind of kicked this off, but with their kind of release schedule, they kind of let it fall behind a little bit. So we're just going to pick up the torch and run with it. What we've done is for the next 4 months leading up to Adepticon, we're going to go ahead and every 2 months, we're going to do a drawing. And to enter the drawing, all you have to do is take a picture of whatever your project is. By the deadline, you have to take a picture of obviously the project and a piece of paper with your Discord name, our keyword, which will be generated on the time of, and then the date. And then at the time of, 2 weeks later, you have to submit a picture of whatever you've accomplished by that time. And obviously with the same piece of paper, either a different piece of paper or the same piece of paper. I don't care, as long as it's got the same info on it. And so we've got it broken down into 4 stretches per section. And so what you'll do is you'll get a entry into a drawing for every one of these, and then you'll get an extra entry into the drawing if you're a patron at the time of the drawing. Now, most people are going to say, well, I don't like doing these 2-week hobby challenge things because they either feel threatened, I'm not going to make it, or I'm going to feel obligated to push myself to do something I'm not comfortable with, or I'm not that good of a painter, I don't want to show off that much. And we really don't mind. We want people to improve at all aspects of the hobby. So the important thing here is, if you're not a good painter, that doesn't matter. What we really want to see here is constant progress and constant usage of your hobby time. And again, the other, kind of argument I hear from that is, well, I've got kids, or I've got this and that, and life's exploding crazy right now. I don't think I can get a lot done. We aren't going to judge you on how much you submit. If you tell me that the best thing that you can do is flip apart a squad, or glue a couple Marines together, or help edit a podcast, or whatever it is, something that you can physically take pictures of and submit to us, that is fine for entering this contest.
And what are we doing
Now,
for the giveaway? Do we know?
we do. So I had Michael, sometimes occasional member of the community and occasional appearance on this show, reached out, and he's going to donate some Cataphracti Terminator prints. So each person that wins is going to get a couple of Terminators, as well as a customized award to the person. So what I said last time was we're going to go ahead and award them with some hobby tools depending on what they want. So when the award comes, I'm going to go to Daiso. I'm going to pick up all their hobby tools and pick them up there and figure out, hey, out of this selection, what are the things that you don't have? And they're going to get whatever that is. So if that's some of the sponge weathering stuff, if that's the watercolor pencils that I like to use for washes and for decal applications, if that's the tiny drill bit set, or custom X-Acto boxes, or sorting boxes and things like that. Basically, I'm going to go into a dollar store and spend $10. So you're going to get a fairly decent sized prize for this. And then we will ship that off to whoever wins it and lock in for the next one. So the first drawing is going to be done on February 1st, and the next drawing is going to be done on March 24th. And then depending on the results of this, we may end up continuing this going forward through the entire podcast.
Sounds good to me. And where can people find that information?
I believe that's at heresypodcast.com.
Sounds good to me, sir.
We have a special channel called 2-Week Hobby Challenge, and submissions are due in there.
Also, sounds really good to me. So,
I assume hosts aren't eligible, right?
yes, hosts are not eligible.
That's just me.
Say, if
I know
I'm able to do it, everybody else should be able to.
But regardless, this host is gonna post up his challenge as well. And
Absolutely. Everyone, I think, should post up as well and join it, even though we ourselves will not be eligible for the win.
So, ironically, right now as we're talking, we got a question in the chat. Does it have to be Heresy models, or can be any miniatures in general?
we are hobby positive. I think it should be, but it's your call.
Normally, I'm okay with that, but I think because we're trying to get people to go to Adepticon for the events, I think we're going to limit this one just to Heresy stuff.
That's fair.
I mean, that's absolutely something I would agree with, and keeping it in the spirit of the challenge makes sense to me.
Yeah,
So,
we don't mind if you want to do questions in other sections of our chat, if you want to bring up, painting BattleTech or whatever, but for these challenges and for these awards, you have to do Heresy stuff.
There we go. Right. I think that's all we have at the moment on that. So let's go to the meat and potatoes of tonight. So online, if you follow any of the social medias or any of the various rumor groups, various this, that, and the others, you're going to see a lot of people talking about the rumor that next year we're going to get Heresy 3.0. So Heresy 3.0 is, well, no one really knows exactly what it's going to be yet because we haven't heard anything as to what the specifics are because no one's had any specifics. That said, what do we know or think we know that we believe needs to be changed or altered if and when a third edition comes out? Now, I'm not talking about what do we think needs to be clarified in a FAQ, although that would be something that I think would be greatly appreciated by the community, would be regular FAQ updates. What are some things that we as a group think need to be addressed and possibly changed between the current edition and any potential future editions that may come along? Rules, interaction wise, general wise, what have you.
Ooh, I have one.
Okay.
Four,
Go ahead,
four,
Dan.
4 letters. MVGA. Make vehicles great again.
Okay. How
How do you
how
do
would
that?
you suggest what do you see as the problem and how would you suggest it be corrected?
So the problem is that you can't throw one Land Raider or one Spartan out on the table. You can kind of get away if you saturate the table with a bunch of tanks and rhinos and stuff. And most armies will get 1 or 2 at a time, and you can play enough to keep them great. But I want the old, and not to be as cheesy as it was back then, but I want the 3rd or 4th edition Rhino Rush to be semi-viable in Heresy again, right? Put a whole bunch of dudes in rhinos running around the table, and they aren't just all getting freaking doubled out and killed all the time. So I don't know if it's just mostly changing the explosion rules. I don't know if it's making it a little harder for heavy weapons to blow them up. Maybe a little mix of both of those things.
Making them tougher.
Making them tougher. I just miss, you know, in my mind, what the bulk of miniature wargaming was when I started is like fantasy where movements and moving things around the table is important, but the big enhancement is that they're all in vehicles, right? It's not a bunch of dudes marching around. It's it's a bunch of vehicles moving around and then guys hopping out and shooting and smacking each other around. And I think that this edition took it too far in making that less viable or less fun or just not the same way to play Heresy as it used to be. And I miss that. I'd love to have it go back to that similar kind of setup.
Okay. Well, what changes then do you think should be made? And how would you make them or how would you want them to be put in rule wise, effect wise, I guess?
Well,
I
I
think I
guess
could break.
good.
There's a couple ways that I would say, Dan, is probably the best way. I'm with you. I think vehicles have had the nerf bat straight to the lower import to the lower input port. That they have taken a serious beating into the fact where you almost don't want to run them, or you want to run too many of them that your opponent's just confused. There's not like a middle ground that we had in some of the previous editions.
Yeah.
A lot of the buff came from really across the board. It seems that they did a couple things that made it. I liked going from 3 to 5. We had, or 3 to 7. We had the addition of hull points. We had the addition of the AP chart, changing to where the APs helped blow up the vehicles easier. And I like the fact that AP4 can't just detonate a vehicle by itself; that it's got to core it out. But when you add in all of the changes that got made to all of the heavy weapons, so all the last cannons got thunder. I'm all for my last 10 hitting harder, but when I'm firing 10 of them and all 10 of them get the reroll, it seems a bit much. Same thing goes with multi-meltas that got they got the buff to twin link for all of them. I mean, I like when my single shot multi-melta doesn't miss as often, but again, when I'm shooting multiples, it starts to compound. I think this is really inherent in the way that 2.0 was built to field more larger blocks of specific weapon types. And I think that this runs right into, and I'll let you talk about what you want to talk about, and then after I finish this real quickly, I think this runs right into one of my fixes, which is fix artillery. I think artillery was nerfed to make the other heavy weapons better, to make vehicles worse. I think it was that 3-point combo of make multiple heavy weapons better so that people would take more of them. So that, okay, so now that we've got the multiple people taking more guns, we need to make sure that they're not dying as fast. So we need to make artillery worse. And making big guns better and artillery worse made vehicles not worth taking. So you talk about what you want to do, and then I'll talk about artillery.
Yeah, I think the survivability thing is a big part of it, right? And is it last cannons hit too hard? Is that there's too many chances for heavy weapons to shoot at vehicles because vehicles don't get reactions and dudes on foot do? I think I'd like to see some sort of defensive reaction for vehicles if we're going with just modifying, tweaks on the existing rules that would make them a little more survivable. And definitely do something about the vehicle explosion, doubling out everybody and getting rid of all of the ablative save kind of stuff that transported units get hit so hard when a vehicle explodes would be the kind of the changes I'd like to see made.
I think if you really want to make the vehicles more survivable and more effective, I think one of the things for me that makes sense would be the removal not just of sunder on last cannons, but also changing the way vehicle explosions work. I used to love the idea of it blows up worse for the guys who are inside than it does for the guys outside. If we returned to, say, vehicle explosions are, heck, not the way it used to be, but just make all vehicle explosions a flat strength 7 for everybody, rather than doubling out almost every single miniature that's an infantry-wise on the tabletop. I think that would make it more effective.
I would say 7 outside, 6 inside, 5 inside if it's open topped.
Do you mean the other way around? 7 for inside, 6 for outside?
Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
and then that way, and then what you'd also have, like maybe 6 or 5 for open top. That way you could say
I would
they were
absolutely
able to
agree.
dodge better or something.
I would absolutely agree. Doing something like that, I think, to where it doesn't just pretty much eliminate anybody in a squad who doesn't make their armor save, character or not, and just doesn't double everybody out. I think that would be a big thing that would go to seeing more transport usage and therefore more general tanks and vehicles itself on the actual table for games.
And remove the AP.
Yeah.
Because right now there's no, like, if you shoot a militia or a Solar Ox vehicle and they're not running the power armor Solar Ox, you just kill 90% of them because it wounds out a 2 and they double out and they don't get saved.
Yep.
So
yeah, if you totally remove any AP on the vehicle detonating, other than super heavy detonations, and you lower the strength on the actual explosion inside and outside, I think that makes it a lot more viable for people to see and use transports on the table. And I think that would be a good thing overall. And I think doing that, you're going to see more people playing transports, which means you're going to see people building other vehicles. You're going to see people shifting in the way they play against those who have transports. I think that would make it a lot more viable and fun for
Yep.
tanks on the table, especially given how many tanks GW has put out for Heresy and how many of us have piles upon piles of tanks that we use sparingly in this edition.
So speaking of piles upon piles of tanks, I really dislike the current squadron rules for vehicles.
Okay.
Like the change I would do, because I know that's going to be the next quick question, would be you buy them as a squadron. I think buying them as a squadron, let them do whatever they want with vehicles, with transportation, could possibly be too powerful. I think the first step would be you can buy them as a squadron. They still have to maintain some type of unit coherency, more than the 4 inches right now. I don't remember off the top of my head because I don't use.
So you're talking like Predator squads.
Yeah, Predator squadrons being able to buy 3, 4, 5, whatever the number is, they have to stay in coherency. But if you damage one, that damage doesn't automatically go to the one that is 4 inches away if you burn through all the hull points.
Yeah, I do hate when combat you manage to get 3 guys into combat and kill 4 tanks.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
That's a very good point.
And that one's easy. Just I don't even think, you put 3 Predators on the table. They need to maintain squad currency, even if you bought them as a squad. Buy them as a squad and let them do the Dreadnought thing, right?
See that was my first thought, but thinking about like buying a squadron of land raiders, and then it could be dicey with the transportation, being able to spread it out. I don't think it would be. I think the first step in the pathway would be to eliminate the splash over wounding. I think that would be the first step into testing it, instead of this ripping off the bandage. Because like I love what they did with Dreadnoughts. I think they did too big of swing with Dreadnoughts, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And it left a
the
lot of...
Sponson rule...
Sorry, go ahead, John.
I was going to say the Sponson rule that they added, that you could change shots if your Sponson can't see the main target, really helped out squads a lot. But I think it kept the weaknesses that were already there from the previous editions, of the fact that if you get into assault with them, it's possible for you to kill the whole thing. I don't know, like part of me is like, maybe that's part of the weaknesses built into the squadrons. Maybe, like you said, maybe just take it so you can't spill over off of the first one unless you've got people maybe you have to have people in combat with the tank in order to be able to hurt it.
My only concern there would be, I think a good way to fix it would be, yes, to keep the actual, or in my mind, would be to keep the spillover, but only make the spillover occur to other vehicles in the squadron within X amount of distance from the first tank that you shoot at. So let's just say the coherency is 4 inches, and you shoot, and you've got 3 rhinos or 3 predators. You shoot the one on the left. The wounds can blow through that first one on the left and then can blow into the second one. But the third one, who's now basically 10 inches away because of the width of the actual tank, cannot get, or 11 inches or 12 inches or wherever the hell it is, cannot get the wounds blown through it from the one beside it, because that one wasn't the first one shot. So basically, it can only spill over to another 1 total tank, not 2, in a squadron.
What about...
I feel like that would be the exact same thing that we're dealing with now, because first turn, that last cannon squad, to which I personally feel like heavy weapon squads don't need anything to happen to them. I think they're finally in a good spot, and with the rules they currently have, is going to wipe out your 250 points worth of tanks turn 1.
So what if you use the cover mechanic, right? So you hit the first tank and it's just like shooting a normal tank, but you go to the second tank and it gets a 6+ from any spillover wounds. And if it's the third tank further away in the same unit, then it gets a 5+ for any carryover wounds, right? That's a
Then you'd
mechanic
have
that would
you'd have
make
to slow down
sense.
the shooting way, way more, because the way it works right now is you shoot, you say, okay, I caused 5 pins, and then you roll the pin damage, and then figure out what happens. So what you'd almost have to slow it down to say, okay, I caused 5 pins. Roll each pin one at a time until it blows up, and then once that happens, then we figure out how many pins are left. Then I get to save those. Then we figure out how
Yeah.
many are left.
I mean, that's still not as painful as sometimes you get the artificer armor tanking in single units, but that's a different
It's
conversation.
almost
A little
worse
bit.
because of the way it compounds with multiple extra tanks. The artificer tanking, you know, like, okay, I have this pool of dice, I roll one at a time. Whereas the other one, what you've got to do is you've got to roll a number of dice equal to the hull points, and then you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's adding it's making it's like splitting up
Yeah.
the pain into different pieces.
I see where you're coming from on that. I also kind of see where Dan's coming from, but I don't think basically giving tanks a save would really work. I guess I kind of agree in point in some of it with Jack there, where yeah, on turn one you're lined up, they're lined up, they can see all your tanks, they hit the one in the middle, and then it blows up the one beside it, and then the wounds fill out to the other one and blows up the other one beside it, and the one in the middle is also blown up. Yeah, that does suck. Maybe the complete elimination of the spillover wounds, or force them to re-roll the dice to see if they penetrate the other ones.
See, I'm for removing spillover together. Yes.
Yeah, no, I mean, I see where you're coming
And
from.
I think it would make it faster too.
I think that the removal of the spillover wounds would make it faster.
Mhm.
You're right.
And it would, and the biggest thing, it would enable people to play different styles of army, because I would love to play a tank heavy list. I really truly would. But there's no benefits.
No, there really aren't.
Like, they, in this edition, second edition, they've made basically almost everything into a squadron for the most part. You can even take the Kratos and a squadron of like 2 or 3, but there's no point.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Yeah, so
I mean, with where I've always thought with where vehicles are at right now, that, like I said in the beginning, giving them the dreadnought rule where you buy them as a squadron and then they come on the table and then just their own vehicles doesn't break anything too much, I don't think. I mean, I guess maybe if you're playing, an all tank, right? The rate of war where you're just like 18 predators and a couple land raiders or something on the table, maybe that's a little tough to kill throughout a whole game. But I don't know.
I don't know. I've seen both sides of that.
Yeah,
Where
I've usually been the one running the 12 predators and 4 rhinos and other stuff. So I think if you keep some of the heavy weapon killing capabilities and don't, yeah, and this is the problem, because if you say, okay, let's keep the heavy weapon killing capabilities because it allows you to deal with 12 predators easier. Well, you can deal with 12 predators easier, and you can really easily deal with the 2.
yeah, but even ignoring just that, the Iron Company or whatever it is, where you've got 12, 16 predators, what have you. As it is right now, bringing a squadron of 3 or however many predators onto the table, or even 3 Kratos, it just seems kind of wasteful, because there's that ubiquitous 10-man last cannon heavy weapon team throwing down there with Sunder right at you. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think a good way to do it. Hang on. Yeah, I think I know a way to do it that might be actually something that would work for Jack in the way he wants it done. Would be the elimination of spillover wound or spillover penetrations in shooting. but not in hand-to-hand combat. Because if you're spilling over onto the tanks in the squadron, you got guys thematically jumping onto tanks, jumping onto this tank, jumping from this tank onto the back of the other tank, stuffing a melt-a-bomb in this crevice, and then Bob over there stuffing a melt-a-bomb into another crevice. I think taking away from shooting would work, and then allowing the spillover wounds in hand-to-hand combat might be viable.
Yeah, I like
No,
John's
my
idea.
problem
I like,
was my problem was more with the combat.
Yeah, I know. That
well, I was
also
gonna
is a
say,
problem.
but I think that John's got a point, right? There's rules for who, how close you have to be to a model in hand to hand to wound it. Use those same rules against a squad of vehicles, right? If you're within an inch of that vehicle, then you can carry over the wounds to it, whether you're touching it or not. If you're not, you can't, right? I mean, that's a simple mechanism, and it's already in game. It makes sense, right?
So that's
If
not actually in the game.
Yeah, you can if you cause
well, it's
30
in the game
wounds, you can
for
kill
hand
30
to hand,
Marines. No, it's
huh?
not.
No, it's
It's
not.
not. If you cause the right amount of wounds, you can kill 120 guardsmen.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. No, it's if you are stuck in that 120 guardsman blob or that 120 Solar Ox blob, and I run in there with
you just have to be 2 inches away from
the swing.
that. Yeah.
The
Right.
wounds don't have any distance that
Yeah,
they
yeah,
cannot plow in.
Yeah.
Well, then
So
swinging
again-
in vehicles, other vehicles, the attackee would have to end up 2 inches away from the other vehicles in the squadron for those wounds to be able to spill over.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of thinking is you just go ahead and say no vehicles can be hurt unless they're within 2 inches of an attacker.
Now that I would agree with.
Mhm.
Another thing I think might actually make squadrons more viable in hand-to-hand combat would be allowing squadrons at an initiative value to fire their pintle mounts and their sponsons into the attacker.
I think that works with some weapons, and I think that this is almost something we discussed before, where I think defensive weapons needs to be a subtype.
Yeah,
I agree.
That's something that
And
you
yeah,
can
we
use in
have discussed it
Overwatch
before, and I still stand by my
Overwatch or in
statements back
combat.
then.
Yep.
Or your statement, yes, they should, or I forget.
I think they should be something you could actually fire while involved in close combat.
you know,
Yeah.
something
But
below.
only with
as in
tanks.
Overwatch even.
Yeah,
Yeah.
only defensive weapons of strength, whatever or lower, can fire the defensively.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or you
Yeah.
could pay points to upgrade any weapon to a defensive weapon depending on what it is, or something like that.
Yeah, except for turret weapons. I don't think turret weapons should be doing that because you can't really depress most turret weapons that far down.
Yeah, that's what most cupolas were designed for, was to keep infantry off tanks. And
Bingo.
some sponsons were designed for that, and some coaxial weapons were designed for that. So that's why I think it should just be a subtype.
I agree.
Yeah, if
I
it were
agree.
like a big flamer template, then maybe that's a different conversation than a flamer turret than most turrets, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a viable thing.
Oh.
Anything else that we all want to go to, or before I throw mine out there?
I'll touch on the artillery. I think that artillery was too good in 1.0 and too terrible in 2.0. I think
Okay.
that I think that most artillery lost at least one, if not two, in some of the bigger cases, template size.
Yeah.
And then also lost strength and AP. I would almost like to go closer to something that was in old fantasy, where the guy in the center of the template took like an obliterating hit, a main strength of the weapon, and then you could do anyone else that's hit by it take a slightly less strong strength of the weapon.
That would take
So this,
a long
Go ahead.
time to sort out, especially if you're doing like barrage style artillery.
a little bit. I think it would add a little bit to it, but I think it would also bring back some of the killing power of the artillery.
It might.
I think an
especially if
easier
you're
way.
doing, like
for making
armigers and things like
artillery.
that.
I'm all for making artillery much more viable.
I personally think that the easiest way to do or to fix artillery would be if Bob is under the hole, Bob takes AP2 on the hit, and everybody else takes AP whatever. But I also think that removal of AP3 from most of those is a bit ridiculous. Maybe making every single artillery hit a rending 5 up with base AP4. I think that would be workable. That make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes more sense than what it is now, where it's like some of them are strength 6 with rending 6 and things like that, where it's just like, why am I bothering to shoot this at Marines?
Yeah. You're not wrong. Which kind of brings me to one of the things I want to bring up is breaching / rending. I think breaching is idiotic.
Yeah.
We've talked about
I-
it a little bit before, but I think you need a half breaching.
I think that
I think 2 becomes
reworking
3 or something like that. Not a complete doubling or tripling of wounds. I think you need it like it adds a piece of it. So you get like, if for every 2 wounds it becomes 3 wounds or something like that.
you're talking about brutal.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yep.
I'm talking about breaching, like on the plasma gun.
Oh yeah.
I think that breaching itself is ridiculous and should be done away with. I think it would be easily reworked just by folding its effect into rending. Because as it is right now, it's a lesser version of rending. And just replacing it with rending in places makes more sense to me.
Forgive me. What is breaching right now?
So I shoot you with my pistol. My pistol is breaching 4 up. My gun is base AP5. Okay.
Okay.
I roll a 4 to wound you. Now my gun becomes AP2.
Okay.
But my gun cannot. I mean, my gun will blow through your armor, but I don't get that extra D3 to attempt to wound or attempt to penetrate deeper onto a tank or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think a rending number would be fine.
Yeah. I think making it rending 5 up, rending 4 up, as it is right now with rending, is just as good. It makes just more sense than having breaching at all. I think breaching is literally just a lesser version of rending that does not make as much sense and is more confusing, and people have to sit there and fight with it if they have any other rending or if they're used to rending being in other armies. So there's my thought on that. I think breaching needs to be thrown in the garbage,
I agree
and
with
rending
that.
needs to be made more rending.
I agree with that.
There we go.
Yep.
Don't disagree. I always forget which is which and have to look it up. So
Yeah.
that would be very helpful.
So the next one is brutal. Brutal is nasty.
I understand the reasoning behind it. If you wanted the big gun or the bigger close combat weapons, you wanted a bigger differentiation between Power Fist and Thunderhammer, and I understand why it came about. I agree that it should have happened. But I think that it's too good for what it is. I think you need less of this 1 wound becomes 2 and more of these 2 wounds become 3. Always round down.
But couldn't you just fix that one with a cost, right? I mean, that's the problem, right? A Thunderhammer costs give or take the same as a Power Fist, but a Thunderhammer
it costs an average 5 points more.
Yes, more.
The problem with Brutal is the fact that Dreadnoughts get it for free, and then almost no one else has it.
Well, it just means every character has Thunderhammers, right? I'm building a Thunderhammer unit because you have to keep up with.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm talking about outside of Thunderhammers. There's very little other places for it in the Marine list. They took Thunderhammers away from Veteran Sergeants because Brutal was too good, and then very little outside of Thunderhammers has access to it. So there's very little Brutal in the mech list at all. It's only on the special mech knights that have it. Like even the Titans don't have it. Like the Warlord Stomp is not Brutal. Make that make sense.
Yeah.
I think
things
brutal
like
needs to
that.
be reworked, and the way I would suggest it be reworked is for each successful wound, brutal basically becomes deflagrate.
Then you would just get rid of brutal
Wow,
and
I
give
like
stuff
that.
deflagrate.
Yes, I would.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
I could see. So what you're doing is you're streamlining not only so you streamline breaching and rending, and you would streamline deflagrate and that. I actually like that.
Yeah, no, I'm all for getting rid of more rules. More rules that rules that are similar but end up doing the same thing. Just streamline it and make it one rule.
Yep. So I think that doing brutal and getting rid of brutal and just swapping out en masse for deflagrate makes more sense. You can even keep the number deflagrate 3, deflagrate 4, or what the hell ever. And basically, I smack you with my thunder hammer. You take an AP 2 wound at strength, whatever. You take the wound. Then I get another chance to wound you at the same strength, but not the same AP.
Would you keep it? Would you keep the lack of spillover or not?
I would absolutely not permit brutal to spill over or deflagrate to spill over to. Ooh, no.
Because deflagrate was designed to burn through things. You shot one guy and it went through him
It
and killed the
was,
guy behind
yes.
him.
So
and
in that
deflagrate-
case, yes, I would
brutal
allow
is
it to do it
designed so
there.
that if I hit a dreadnought super hard, I break it extra.
Yeah, I
So
would allow deflagrate in close combat to cause it on a failed wound to cause a second possible failed wound to that guy, but in shooting to burn through.
Yeah, that'll work. That'd be a quick fix.
And since hand-to-hand combat is, as we all know, my bread and butter, one thing I think should be made ubiquitous is we need to remove shred. No, hear me out. Here's why. You see so many different models out there with different close combat weapons, but they can't buy a different close combat weapon. They buy a chainsword. It's represented on this model by a pickaxe. It's represented on this model by my monofilament knife. It's represented on this model by my entrenching tool. Giving them a close combat weapon and just returning it back to the basics idea of being a close combat weapon makes sense to me. Removing the rule for shred on close combat weapons like chain swords, chain axes, etc., I think makes more sense. Because you're going to use whatever you were equipped with. And in the fluff, in the narrative, not everybody's going to have a chainsword. You've got the Night Lords who had their specific, whatever kind of blade it was. With the Ultramarines, everybody had a Spatha sword.
I like the ability for chainswords to be different from stock knives.
Now you give Bob's
Shred
the
did.
assault squad the chainswords and give that assault squad shred. Congratulations! Now the assault squad makes more sense. It's more useful, and it actually is more unique and has a strength to it rather than just a generic close combat weapon.
That's the way it was. That's the way it works now. Normal close combat weapons don't have shred. So normal Space Marines, unless they buy a chainsword, they don't have shred.
Yeah. So you buy everybody a chainsword.
Yeah.
You can't buy anybody a basic close combat weapon other than a bayonet, which is useless in my mind.
Well, +1 strength.
Yeah. I'd rather have a generic close combat weapon that gives me an extra attack rather than have a bayonet.
I'm still trying to understand your argument for getting rid of shred if you're saying it's good that we have shred.
Okay, so if you keep shred on chainswords, but remove the ubiquitousness of the chainsword, in essence, give everybody access to a close combat weapon, or give everybody access to the chainsword, or who has it right now. But taking away the extra die that you're rolling in close combat, I think makes close combat a little bit less lethal. Especially when you do things like have the weapon skill chart as it is right now, where weapon skill 4 hit, or where if you have weapon skill 4 and I have weapon skill 5, I'm hitting you on 3s and you're hitting me on 5s. It makes it a lot more likely that I'm going to rip through your squad than it is that you're going to sit there and rip into my squad. It makes it harder, takes longer to do the actual dice rolling, and makes the game take longer.
Shred is just a reroll on failed to wounds. I don't understand how that makes me hit you more.
No, I'm using it as a conjunction of something else that I think needs to be changed. I think the weapon skill chart needs to be changed entirely, and I
Yeah.
think the ubiquitousness of shred on close combat weapons called chainswords needs to go away.
Well,
If you gave shred to specifically an assault squad because of training, specialized training, or what have you,
Oh,
fine.
okay, that's what you're arguing. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, now I get it. It's less of a weapon thing and more of a training thing.
Yes.
so I mean, if we really are starting a
That
new
seems like
edition,
that seems like it's more win more. It's because I'm already a high weapon skill unit, I should therefore get shred as well. So it seems like you're
Nope.
it's
Nope.
doubling up.
I think we should go back to the old weapon skill chart.
Even with the old weapon skill chart, I'm still going to hit you on 3s, and I'm still going to
You're
get
gonna
a
hit me
reroll
on.
of the wound.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm not saying give the elites the shred. I'm saying give like the assault squad shred. But my tactical squad, who all have close combat weapons that I bought, don't give them shred. I don't think they need it.
I mean, if we're really going to talk about a new edition, I mean, one of the things that all of these things relate to is the fact that we're limited by a D6 system. So if we're really want to
Nope,
fix
GW will not take away the D6 system.
Yeah.
but we're talking wish lists. Right?
No, we're not talking wish list. We're talking about the possibility of what things we think should be changed
What
with
we think
regards to
GW would
3.0.
change
That's fair.
within reason. So it's not like we're going to say that custode should be auto win buttons, because they're not auto win buttons. You at least have to roll some dice. So that's a joke. New custodes are actually pretty terrible unless you take a Terran guard. Yeah, I think that now that I'm kind of understanding that, if you add the weapon skill change as well, I think that would work.
I also think it would stop the somewhat mindless, I'll be honest, myself included, creation of close combat weapon armies that take a pile of elite hand-to-hand combat units and just roll into your lines and then roll through, taking very little to no damage in hand-to-hand combat. And yeah, Reavers do it, Rampagers do it, Templar Brethren do it. I think it's kind of ubiquitous that we've all seen it. I've done it more times than I can count because that's the way I play. And I think honestly, it can lead to one-sided, unfun games.
But
Yes,
when I was
I
playing
get that there are
Cobras
better. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
was playing Cobras for the first couple times at Adepticon, and in 2.0, it's really the reason I've been looking for other stuff to do, because I threw a 50-man blob into a basic, or actually it was one time I threw them into a tactical squad and I killed 2 Marines. The next time I threw them into a weapon skill 5 squad and I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
100 attacks.
Yep, I think
6
that
to hit, 5 to wound. No, nothing, 0, zilch.
Yeah.
I get that that's okay. If Delta Force comes up to a kindergarten, that's how it's going to work. But at the same time, occasionally one of them kids is going to throw a rock.
yeah, and that's
Or-
one thing I think right
or-
now with
or
the current
third.
weapon skill chart that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I like when they came through and almost doubled the points for what are the jump pack ultramarine special units in the legacy PDF. Yeah, when they jumped their points so much at first, I was like, I don't know that makes sense. But then I had a 5-man unit at Michigan GT go through 3 tactical squads in 3 turns, and took a wound in the first one and didn't take a wound in the other 2. Right? I mean, just that difference in weapon skill and their special power swords is insane, and it's a lot about them being that elite unit with the higher weapon skill. Right? It just makes such a huge difference.
Yep. So, I mean, when you sit there and you take a weapon skill 5 unit and you throw them at a weapon skill 3 unit, you're hitting on 3s, but they're not. They're hitting you predominantly on 5s or 6s, depending on the weapon skill difference.
Yep.
And I think having it back to the old way, where if you were that much higher, yes, they need a 5. And if you were ridiculously higher, yes, they needed a 6. Made more sense. But going back to the you
It's
are
not
hitting
just,
them better, they could still hit you on a semi-regular basis. Makes more sense
Exactly.
to me.
Yeah, it's not just how easily you're hitting them; it's
How hard they're hitting you
how
back.
impossibly they're trying to hit
Yeah,
you
yeah.
back is the problem
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. So that's why close combat armies get, or with elite weapon skill 5, weapon skill 6, getting into close combat with things that have weapon skill 4 or lower. I mean, you're just going to walk right through them 9 times out of 10. And
Well,
it's
look at the mechs.
not fun.
Look at Mechanicum in general. Like, they have nothing that's weapon skill 5, except
Yeah.
for maybe a couple characters you can pay a crap ton of points for.
Yep.
Like, how do you, if you get the Lucky Taurus into combat with Castellax, either they're going to dodge the entire time. The Lucky Taurus are going to dodge what few attacks Castellax have back, or the Lucky Taurus are eventually going to wear them out in 6 turns because they're high toughness and it's harder for them to wound with the basic power sword, assuming they didn't upgrade or anything. Like, there's no point to those type of fights. You turned survivable low weapon skill units into giant tar pits of uselessness.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think
I won't disagree.
I think another change that I would like to see would be with the change to dreadnoughts, walker types, for Leviathan dreadnoughts to make more sense as far as survivability, if they're supposed to be that much stronger than a regular dreadnought. I don't.
Okay, what do you mean?
I don't think their current save situation is accurate with being a 2-up, 5-up.
So
That's the
I
generic for all dreads.
Yeah,
That's
I-
not the other
I
ones.
have a counterpoint to that though, Jack.
But
So in the lore, a dreadnought, whether it's a contemptor or a leviathan, are tough, hard to kill. Don't really, because Marines don't know fear, right? But definitely are respected by Marines as combat. Where Leviathans show up, they aren't that much more than contemptors. I think you're going back to what
No,
first
they are.
edition rules are compared to what I remember in the lore. Or maybe
the
I've
lore with Leviathans, they're too good that they drive the user crazy because of all the psychotic war crimes they're committing.
war crimes.
So
Yummy war crimes.
a Leviathan is larger, stronger, tougher than a regular dreadnought, but one of the costs of it is that it burns out the actual inhabitant so much faster. That's why, from my understanding, fluff-wise, there's almost no Leviathans that survive through, like pilots of Leviathans that survive through to the actual post-Heresy era. Whereas there are numerous contemptors that do.
Yeah, there's one Leviathan out there, and that's the Red Scorpions, and that's only because that's not 40k, it's like 38 and a
30
quarter.
or something.
the Badab stuff.
Yeah.
And even then, he was interred in that after the heresy.
Yep.
So I see where Jack's coming from, because one thing that is kind of ubiquitous also on the Leviathan dreads is their weapons are shorter range. So for them to actually be able to make use of their weapons, they're going to have to get closer to people.
Yep.
As opposed to, I mean, you don't see them with the last cannons. Contemptor can sit over there with its last cannons and frag, like pew 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 the shit out of a Leviathan before it gets close to it, before the Leviathan can even shoot at it. And yeah, I see where Jack's coming from. I think giving a Leviathans, as opposed to other contemptors, I think giving Leviathans a 2-up, 4-up would make sense.
Or like a player skill that only works on ranged weapons or something like that.
See, what I was thinking, just to make it simple, throw another 50 points on them and give them a 2-up, 3-up. And then limit them to a 0-2 instead of a 0-3 or 4, whatever the the number is now.
Okay. That could also work.
This nice, simple, quick, and easy without adding any extra rules to it.
Nope. That would work. Limited, making it more limited, making it cost more, and giving it an increased save all makes sense.
Yeah. Another thing that I would like to see is them not excluding the stuff that has been legend, that isn't in any official book. I would like to see all that rolled back into
with like reasonable points cost and numbers
and all their weapon options back.
Yeah, because like 90% of it was basically made unplayable by their points cost or like the ridiculous rules that like nerfing that they gave them, and then there's like just like a literally one handful of units in the legends section or whatever that is actually good, still good, you know.
Yeah, and give some of the weapons that disappeared back, like the autocannons to Fomentarus and the special transport rule to the drop pod thingy.
There were 3 weeks when Fomentarus were amazing.
It was a lot longer than 3 weeks.
It was it was longer than that.
But wasn't very long though. Still, yeah, that brings me to the last one that that I think needs some work, and that is very specifically, drop pods. I think drop pods need help.
Help? How do you mean?
How many? Well, so in 1.0, you would show up to an event and there would be drop pods in many armies, half or more. You show up to events now and there are all drop pod armies, and there's not another drop pod anywhere on the table in any other army. And I don't like that. I think you should have the ability to bring a couple drop pods and have them work in the rule set.
Okay, that makes sense.
So you're saying not limit them to functioning with regards to having their own right.
Yeah, like
I don't mind them having a right,
but going back to how they were before.
I think that
transport.
I think that they worked before, and they don't work now, and I'd like to see them work again the way they did with buying a couple.
The problem with you not seeing as many of them, I mean, obviously they lost the dedicated transport for a lot of units, but also the fact that if you drop them, they will get reacted on 90% of the time.
Yeah.
That's the problem one. The problem two is the shut-off guy. I forget his name.
Master Signal.
Yep. He can basically turn off drop pods or really any reserve. And the fact that weakens that army so much that if someone takes him, it's basically a 2-up and your army doesn't work right.
Yep, you're not wrong.
Hindrance. I understood what they're for with that, but I don't think that they understood how it would affect the people that over rely on it.
I would agree.
I mean, even my Cobra army that only had 4 reserves, the 2 transport planes and the 2 shooty planes, that thing would basically just, I couldn't have aircraft if he wanted it that way. I think that there needs to be some type of change to that thing. I think that would help them a lot too. It's the fact that there's such a hardcore counter out there. It's almost like the Xiphon is now for a lot of aircraft.
Yeah, it kind of is.
Yeah, I don't know what the rules wise, I don't know what the fix is, right? Is it that a drop pod, I don't know, you didn't like the giving vehicle save rules, but is it a drop pod, how it's a big flame and dust cloud when it hits, so it gives them saves against that reaction attack or something, or makes it harder to hit with that reaction attack. Mechanics wise, I'm not exactly sure how that still gets fixed.
I don't think there. I think giving it back to a dedicated transport and not doing anything else would be the easiest thing, because then it's onto the player onus to create a list where that would work in, where you would have multiple units coming in and pressuring at the same time.
Yep.
And you have to kind of pick and choose, because because we've been dancing around reactions a lot in our conversation.
We have.
And that's not something I feel confident that we could discuss in one show, because there's a lot of strong opinions about reactions.
I mean, I really like the idea of reactions. I think that there's some flaws in how they've been introduced, and I think a tweak to the reaction system would be another thing if we were going to spend a lot of time talking about it. But that's almost the whole conversation.
My tweak would be the trash can.
That's like talking about how saves should work when you're doing it when it comes to artificer armor on a sergeant. That's a whole entire another thing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Putting that entirely into another show would make sense.
Yeah.
But we all agree reactions need a tweak.
Yeah.
We'll leave it at that.
So that was what I was going to bring up, but okay.
This is kind of leading back into my previous bit about the weapon skill chart. I think Terminator armor in general and Terminators in general are in an absolutely shit place for generic Terminator.
Generic, yeah, like the generic plain Jane.
The elites of the
yeah.
whatever are in an absolute garbage place.
Yeah.
You get me a squad of Reavers that jumps on top of a pack of 10 Terminators, 10 generic Terminators. I'm going to lose maybe 2 Reavers. Maybe 3, and you're going to lose most of the Terminators.
Remind me, do veterans have a 5 in weapon skill?
Yes, they do.
So Terminators are supposed to be veterans by definition. So why doesn't the base that
not
Terminator?
necessarily.
That's the problem, is that they're not. In Heresy, it's just another armor.
Yeah.
Depends on the army.
It does. Now, if you're talking about the specialized units, like say the Fire Drakes, hey, they've got weapon skill 5. You're talking about the Justarin or the Deathwing Knights. Hey, look, weapon skill 5.
So if you added,
guys don't.
But these are all the named like special ones. Duncan's talking about just the generic plain Jane like troop style Terminators.
So what if you add 2 more types of Terminators? You add a shooty Terminator unit that has a 5 ballistic skill for 5 points a model or 7 points a model, and you add an assaulty Terminator squad for 5 or 7 points an army that lets you get a 5 weapon skill.
That would be cool.
Mournival did that.
Mournival did that.
They've done that with that, and they also added in special weapon assault squads, which makes sense because right now it seems like Terminators and Assault Marines are kind of the stepchildren of the game. Tactical squads can go power armor, can go tactical squad, support squad, heavy squad, whereas assault squads can't get heavy assault or support assault, and Terminators also can't do that unless you've got the 2 special units that have it, the Fulmintaris and the Iron Warrior one. So I think
I think a lot of people just do what I'm doing, and they only bring Terminators when they're command squads, is what I've seen.
And that is a giant problem in my mind. Because if you look at it, Cataphractii armor and Tartaros armor are ubiquitous in the art. They're ubiquitous in the stories.
Yeah.
And everybody has them, and everybody loves them. They're cool as hell when you see them on the table. Everybody who does up their Terminators to look awesome, and then they just play mediocre.
Yeah.
Again, I think the fix of it is not just kind of like Mournival did, like John referenced, having an assault squad of Terminators and a shooting squad of Terminators. I think that's a
Still-
possibility wise.
That still doesn't fix the basic bitch Terminator problem. And
No, it sure
there
doesn't.
was a fix I had before there was the AP bonuses for vehicles. Before the AP bonus for vehicles, I would say to people that the AP shouldn't beat armor unless the AP was better than the armor. So you couldn't. So plasma guns would still kill Marines, but they wouldn't kill Terminators. Blast cannons.
AP1 instead of AP2.
Yeah. So you could still fail armor saves on a 1. So basically, it just made it so that it was harder to kill Terminators, except for the biggest of guns. Obviously, you can't do that because you still need the AP to cross over into the vehicle damage. Because we're trying to streamline things.
I think the best streamlining there would be to make the generic Terminator squad entry.
Heavy.
You pick which direction it's going to go. It comes with a blank slate. If you choose to go, and you can do this with just one entry. If you choose to go shooting, it has these options. If you choose to go close combat, it has these options. And yet again, you remove the current weapon skill chart and go back to the old one.
Do Terminators have heavy by default?
Depends. Cataphracti do. Well, they don't have heavy. They have whatever the hell the rule is.
The one that gives them reroll saves against blast weapons?
Yes.
Breachers have? Okay.
I think. Give me a second. I'm actually going to open up my new recruit.
Yeah, I just got the book while we was talking.
Cataphracti does have heavy.
Okay. I almost wonder if you make heavy, because my problem was always breachers die too quick for the fluff. Always talked about them chugging off thousands of rounds of ammunition before the shield fails. I wonder if you shouldn't make heavy reroll saves against basic weapons or something like that. So just against bolters or against auto weapons, or maybe just reroll saves in general.
Heavy is something that I've toyed around with idea wise, and I haven't come up with a good one that I think works.
I've never taken breachers because to me in the fluff they're nearly Terminators. In the fluff, it talks about them taking so much fire. Like, oh, here's a gun at the end of the hallway. Okay, everybody hold position until the breachers get up here. Then we can take this hallway. And in the fluff, and in real 30K, who cares? Just charge up the hallway anyway. They're both going to die at the same rate.
So my thought and this wasn't just for heavy, or this wasn't for heavy, but it was for breacher shields in general and breacher squads in general. Give them leave them with a 3-up regular armor save, but give their shield the effect that it lets them have a re-rollable 3-up against anything that's not AP3 or better, and then give them a re-rollable 5-up.
Yeah, I would almost say maybe make that heavy and just roll that into Terminators as well. That would make them a lot more survivable.
But you'd have to give you could, but
the problem is then you make the super Terminators super Terminators.
Correct, because then you have like the Cataphracti or Fire Drakes, who have then a rerollable.
Become gods.
Yeah, become a rerollable 3-up. That's why I was thinking use this just for breacher squads.
Well, you're probably I mean, there was also the rumors that there was that new box set coming out that was supposed to have Saturnine Terminators in it as well.
Yeah, so that's another thing. If the Saturnine come out, all bets are off on the table for what we're going to see or do for the Terminators. But I think making breachers do this way,
but not to throw a monkey wrench in, but that's something that needs to be kind of like in the at least this thought of.
Yeah, but if you make just generic breachers do the reroll 3-up with a reroll 5-up invulnerable, it doesn't invalidate the Phalanx Warder Squadron, who are literally the line squad that does the same but better.
Right. No, yeah.
If you make them, I think it's with their rules, become a rerollable 3-up or 2-up on their sergeant, who I think with them should actually have the artificer armor removed. But give them a rerollable 3-up, 4-up just for the phalanx warders. I think that would make more sense.
Yeah, and while we're talking about squads and changes, I would like command squads, maybe the basic version of command squads, to be able to be taken by the Centurion upgrades.
Okay.
You could have a Master of Signals command squad that's all decked out in like comms gear, and you could have a Chaplain command squad that's maybe it's the people he's training to be Masters of the Lore in the future. Like all these, because it seems so weird to me that you just cut off all these really cool modeling opportunities and ideas behind fluff and things like that.
Kind of like
by
how they
limiting
made the some of the extended whatever the hell, Jesus, exemplary battles, how where they threw some of those units in and they were literally like the next up and coming chaplains or the next up and coming
Yep.
centurions. Yeah, those make sense. I think those do
Yeah.
make sense.
I think you have a centurion, whatever centurion you have could take a command squad. Even the same with the, obviously maybe make them limited to their war gear or something. But I think that they should be able to take command squads because a banner and along with whatever they're taking would be, if nothing else, just cool. I don't think it breaks anything. Maybe the Moritat does because you can take a couple extra guns with him, but
They
rule of
just make
cool
him
for-
not able to join anybody.
Yeah.
Or not able to join a command squad. That would fix
Yeah.
his problem. And just
Rule of
tie it to
cool,
the
I think,
actual tying it to the actual type of centurion upgrade or console upgrade. I think that would make sense.
Yeah, I think I just want rule of cool to be there because we all talked about how cool it would be to have those command squads, and then literally at the end of that episode we go, "Oh, that doesn't work."
Yeah. I still feel kind of shitty about that one. Sorry out there, listeners.
Yep.
Um,
Sometimes y'all learn with us.
one thing I also think needs to be seriously addressed is a praetor. I'm sorry. How many different times do you roll up to the table and the praetor you see across the table from you is Artificer Armor, Iron Halo, Paragon Blade, Thunder Hammer?
I really
It's-
like Ferrix's
I
prayer
do
history.
too. I think that allowing each, I mean, not even just making it just generic, but allowing each of the actual legions to have personal ways to personalize their praetor to actually make him theirs. I think that would be more fun without stepping on Ferrix's toes or stealing the ideas from Ferrix. But if GW made it to where, oh, you're a World Eater Praetor, okay, you can for X points pick up Rage 2, and you can pick up something else that adds to you to make you more World Eatery. Oh, you're an Iron Hands Praetor. Okay, cool. For X points, you can pick up a cybernetic arm or a cybernetic foot that gives you X bump to whatever and gives you a 5-up non-avoidable feel no pain that is immune to doubling out. Because, oh, look, it just bounced off my cybernetic arm or my cybernetic shoulder or my cybernetic toe. Or, hey, look, you're your own special legion of snowflakes. You have something legion specific that makes your praetor customizable, that has tweaks to the game and tweaks to how you play your praetor, but does not make them an unbeatable god on the battlefield and makes them more fun and more unique and more fluffy for your legion. Doing that while still having warlord traits that actually make differences in games, I think makes more fun, makes more narrative, and adds more to player agency so that people feel more involved in their praetor. Rather than just, oh, look, it's generic praetor number 1.
So, do you think, though, some of that is the weapon skill and the brutal rules and just
Yes.
the rules themselves making it to where people are
some of it
taking
is,
the same praetor all the time? versus
Some are just finding the best
some
freighter.
of the other fixes we put into place here would go a long ways to getting what you're talking about on the table without changing that rule at all, right?
Yes,
Just
you're
'cause-
absolutely right. But the weapon skill thing isn't going to make that much of a difference. The change to brutal, cool. So we remove brutal, we just make it deflagrate. It's still something you're going to see everywhere.
Yeah.
You're still going to see it on Praetors. You're still going to see them with a Praetor. If nothing else is added, but just changed right now from brutal to deflagrate, you would see Praetors with Thunder Hammers and Paragon Blades.
No, in my luck, right? So, now that I'm actually building a unit that has, full Thunderhammer Terminator Command Squad with the Praetor with a Thunderhammer, second edition will take Brutal away and nerf it somehow to where that unit sucks completely in the next edition. So,
I'll be right there beside you, Dan. I've got a unit of 12 Justarian who all have Thunderhammers.
Now,
Mhm.
don't get me wrong, this Valentis Dollar unit's going to be fucking badass, and they'll see the table whether they're good or not. And I'm building it because that's the unit I want to build. But, you know, the historic luck is that they will suck.
No,
You
I
know,
mean, I get what you're
I'm the guy
saying.
that built. I'm the guy that built the null deploy drop pod word bearers that was pretty much finished playable right at the time they announced 2.0. And they became crap shoot to play and not really good. And I put heavy plasma in there or warp fire, whatever the word bearers rules is, and they're the worst to come out of a drop pod at all because they can't move and shoot at all, snap fire, anything the turn they come in, so they sit there and look dumb and get killed. So yeah, my luck is that they'll suck when 3.0 comes out, but that's okay. So we've parking lotted reactions for another
time.
episode, and because that's probably a whole episode topic on its own. And I don't know, we could probably make Artificer Armor Sergeants a whole episode topic on its own too.
Yep.
Cool.
All right. Anything else? No, you want to touch?
I can't think of anything at the moment. I
think
think
we're
there's
good.
obviously other stuff we could all address
Mm-hmm.
and wouldn't mind doing so, but I don't think I know specifically anything else that I think would be more game balancing change wise.
But
I also think we're running along, and it's the Sunday night before of the long weekend, and we all got to get up early and go to work tomorrow. So running too long, it probably isn't awesome.
well, I think at this point in the conversation, we'll kick it over to the audience. What do you think? What would you like to see or be carried over or fixed in a fact or a new edition? I don't think we really even covered the likelihood of there actually being a new edition, and why people are thinking that. Because I'm still not understanding why we're thinking there's going to be a new edition. But let's kick it over to you all. In the comments on the Facebook page, on the Discord. Start the conversation.
Tell us what you think of our ideas. They make sense? Are we completely nuts? I mean, could be both, I suppose, but
So I think at that point, Duncan, you want to tell John to take us out of here?
I will actually.
Well, tell you what, before you do that, I want to say one more thing.
Uh-oh.
We're not doing this as a way to attack 2.0.
No, not at all.
We're doing this as a way, as a thought experiment to see what, if we were game designers and we were just given the 3.0 plate, what would we do to change it up? There's a lot that changed from 1 to 2 that took us a lot of time to figure out, and sometimes I still forget half of it. But 2.0 is still a game that I enjoy playing. I hope we don't get a 3, but if we got a 3, these are some of the things we'd like to see.
Yep.
I have one suggestion before we go.
Have at it, Jamie.
So it's not even a rules change. Just like if they do a 3.0, make the rules like organized in the rules book instead of just like haphazardly scattered. Like you have one rule that ties into another rule that's like you have to go digging for it, like 100 pages later.
You mean
yeah.
layout and formatting of the actual rule
Because
book.
there's the reactions, they say they're on one page, but then there's a special reaction on this other page, and then there's another special reaction on this other page.
I never remember whether special rules are in the main rule book or in the freaking.
But that's what I'm saying.
I
Loyalist.
hated that where they split the
necessarily
books and
change the rules. I'm just saying
Organize them better.
organize them and make them more concise, like, and stop using like legal language and just put it out in straight, plain English, so that there aren't any arguments about it, and you don't have to spend 30 minutes looking up a rule if there's a question about it. You go to the assault section, or you go to the special rules section, something like that. I know it's crazy talk. I know I'm crazy talk there, but
Well, I have printed out this I forget what it's called, even called now, but there's a reference guide that's amazing.
there's the quick reference card, and like if they, yes, I agree with that. There needs with the way it is, there needs to be a quick reference card. Which, if I remember correctly, there was some that came with the initial box set.
No,
yeah,
this
it was
is
still
like
missing stuff.
This is like a 15 page or 18
Right.
page, something.
Yeah,
codex,
there was
what's
there was
called.
a couple of there was like an Omega Codex that limited a lot of the fluff, and there was some other stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of things to be desired, especially if you're like because one of the weapon special rules are only in the book where that weapon exists, which I kind of understand if you're making up a new gun, but at the time of printing the Marine guns, everyone had access to them, so they should be in the main book. So it was constantly flipping back and forth, and I still don't know where some of that stuff is. I mean, my main rule book, all my rule books have writing in the indexes because it's not just remembering where stuff is. It's
Right.
Okay, well, where does this reference that as well? Sometimes,
Right.
and
But that's what I'm
in the
saying.
weapons.
Make that more concise and user friendly.
Yep.
That's
Amen.
That's a huge ask, and it won't piss people off. Maybe rules lawyers, it might piss them off because it gives them less to argue with, but everybody else would be probably immensely thankful for it.
Yep.
I also have another thing that we could mention.
A tab index? No.
No. So if 3.0 does come, one other thing I would hope for would be a quick and included version of all the ZM rules.
Oh yeah.
But also, because I think this would actually have an attraction to the player base. But do like a kill team format for ZM.
Yeah.
And include that with the actual rules.
Or like the kind of like an intro thing, but yeah.
Yeah, so you could have this is how you
quick
do a squad of war leaders. This is how you do a squad of solar ox.
Well, I mean, like
This is how you do a squad of mechanicum for it.
They're pushing the heck out of Kill Team next week, so
Yep, they are.
Why don't they do something like a quick play game kind of for Heresy? That would be awesome.
Yep, and do that as a co-release along with 3.0 if you were to do that. There's my last bit I've got. John, other than that, you want to close us out?
Absolutely. So we want to thank everybody for joining us on this, the 105th episode of the Heresy Accountabilibuddies Podcast. I'm John, and I've been joined by
Dan,
Duncan,
Jack,
Jamie.
And we want to thank you for listening to us tonight. And always remember to stay accountable to yourselves, to your buddies, and to your hobby. And we'll talk to you next time. Everybody have a good night.
bye-bye.
peace out.
goodbye.